After 30, your fairness isn't virtue, it's a leash. The rich don't outwork you, they outrank you. Stay moral and you stay harvestable. After 30, the world stops pretending, not because it becomes mean, because the mask comes off. You're no longer a student, a young man with potential, a project people can forgive. You're a unit in a machine, a line on a spreadsheet, a predictable resource. And that's where your problem begins. You still think life is a courtroom. You still think effort is evidence. You still think fairness is the referee. You still think doing the right thing earns protection. That belief is not morality, it's programming. Fair play is not a universal law. It's a rule the system teaches the owned, so the owned remain manageable, because a fair man is predictable. He shows up. He works. He waits his turn. He trusts the process. He follows policy. He doesn't offend. He doesn't negotiate hard. He doesn't demand. He doesn't threaten to leave. He hopes the world will notice. That hope is how you're domesticated. Machiavelli understood something soft men refuse to accept. People don't submit to what's right. They submit to what's strong, organized, and costly to oppose. Morality is respected only when it's backed by power. Without power, morality becomes a leash. And after 30, that leash tightens because your value becomes measurable. Output, compliance, availability, utility. The system doesn't need your dreams, it needs your consistency. So it sells you a story. Be fair, be loyal, be patient. Your time will come. That story is a sedative. Because if you ever woke up and realized the game is hierarchy, you would stop behaving like livestock. You'd stop producing without negotiating. You'd stop giving loyalty for free. You'd start pricing yourself. The rich don't rise because they're smarter in a classroom way. They rise because they operate on a different lens. They don't ask what's fair. They ask what wins. That sentence triggers moral panic in fair men. Good. Let it. That panic is the cage rattling. You were trained to associate winning with corruption so you'd avoid it. You were trained to worship sacrifice so you'd accept extraction. Here's the lens shift. The world isn't built to reward the best man. It's built to reward the man with leverage, because leverage moves outcomes. A fair man believes, if I'm indispensable, I'll be valued. A rich man knows, if I'm indispensable, I'm trapped. A fair man believes, if I follow the rules, I'll advance. A rich man knows, rules are for controlling the many while exceptions are sold to the few. A fair man believes, loyalty is noble. A rich man knows, loyalty without terms is slavery. Now you see why fair play fails after 30. It fails because the system becomes more transactional. Youth is forgiven. Age is priced. And if you keep operating on moral fantasy, you become the perfect target. Responsible, hard-working, quiet, ashamed of wanting more. That shame is a weapon used against you. They'll call you greedy if you negotiate. They'll call you ungrateful if you ask for equity. They'll call you toxic if you set boundaries. They'll call you arrogant if you refuse to be managed. These labels are not truth. They're containment tools. They exist to drag you back into obedience. So Chapter 1 does one thing. It kills the courtroom lens and replaces it with the battlefield lens. On a battlefield, you don't ask if the enemy is fair. You ask, where is their supply line? Where is their weak point? What are they paying for? What do they fear losing? That's the Machiavellian posture, reality over virtue signaling. If you're still addicted to being seen as good, you'll keep losing. Because the rich don't win by being evil. They win by being structured. They win by controlling access, information, and terms. And the moment you accept this lens, you stop being shocked by outcomes. You stop saying, how did he get ahead? You start saying, what leverage did he build? That's the pivot. Fair play is a rule for the owned because it keeps you working while someone else sets the terms. After 30, your survival depends on whether you can stop worshipping fairness and start building position. Effort is not the currency of outcomes. It's the fuel the machine burns. After 30, you finally see the brutal math. You can work harder and still get poorer because the system doesn't pay for sweat, it pays for control. And control comes from leverage. Leverage is the ability to move outcomes without begging. A fair man thinks effort is proof. A rich man knows effort is replaceable. That's the mechanism. And once you see it, you stop being confused by why the hardest workers are often the most trapped. Because effort creates value, but it doesn't decide who owns the value. Systems are designed with one priority: keep production stable while concentrating ownership. That's why they praise work ethic publicly and reward position privately. They want you proud of being useful. They don't want you asking who's collecting the upside. So what actually gets rewarded? 1. Ownership. The only real multiplier. Effort is linear. You trade hours for money. There's a ceiling: your body, your time, your attention. Ownership is exponential. You don't get paid for what you do today, you get paid for what continues producing when you stop. The system rewards owners because owners control the faucet. Everyone else fights over drops. A fair man says, "I'll prove myself." An owner says, "I'll secure terms." 2. Access. Who can reach the gate? After 30, you realize the gate matters more than the path. Two men can be equally skilled. One gets ignored, one gets promoted. Why? Access. Access to decision makers. Access to capital. Access to distribution. Access to rooms where deals happen before the public hears about them. Merit is what they tell the crowd. Access is what moves the needle. And access is rarely earned through goodness. It's traded through alignment, reputation, utility, and strategic relationships. 3. Networks. Social infrastructure. A network isn't friends. A network is infrastructure. Fair men think networking is fake because they confuse it with begging. Rich men treat networks like supply routes. The strongest army isn't the bravest, it's the one with logistics. Networks decide who gets opportunities first, who gets warned early, who gets forgiven, who gets funded, who gets protected. When things go wrong, a man without a network is always negotiating from weakness. He has to apply, he has to ask, he has to wait. 4. Information. Asymmetry is power. Information is not knowledge, it's timing. In every market, money, careers, influence, the one who knows earlier wins. The one who knows later pays. That's why systems are built to create asymmetry: insiders versus outsiders. Fair men rely on official rules and public announcements. Rich men rely on signals, whispers, and patterns. They don't need certainty, they need advantage. 5. Optionality. The ability to walk away. This is the invisible weapon. If you can't walk away, you don't negotiate, you comply. If you need the job, need the approval, need the deal, need the relationship, then your choices are cosmetic. Optionality is freedom. And freedom creates leverage because it makes you hard to control. The system rewards men who can leave because those men can demand terms. Fair men stay loyal and call it integrity. Leverage men stay until it stops paying, and they call it strategy. 6. Scarcity. Being hard to replace, not talent. Scarcity. If your role can be filled tomorrow, your effort becomes noise. The system will praise you and underpay you at the same time. Compliments are cheap. Replacement is real. Scarcity comes from unique skills tied to revenue control, of a process ownership, of a relationship pipeline, being the person who can make something happen fast. This is why being indispensable can trap you if you don't convert it into leverage. If you're indispensable but still a servant, you're just a premium grade captive. Now connect it to after 30. In your 20s, you can survive on energy and hope. You can grind, learn, build skill. After 30, the game punishes linear living. Bills stack. Responsibilities harden. Time accelerates. And the system knows you're less likely to gamble on yourself, so it offers you stability in exchange for obedience. That's the trade. Comfort for sovereignty. Chapter 2 installs the mechanism so you stop being emotionally manipulated by work hard sermons. Work hard is not wrong. Work hard without leverage is suicidal. Because the system doesn't reward the man who tries. It rewards the man who controls terms, ownership, access, networks, information, optionality, scarcity. That's why fair play fails. Not because the world is unfair in a childish way, because fairness is irrelevant to machines. Machines respond to leverage. You don't become rich by wanting it. You climb levels. And most men never climb because they're addicted to a moral identity that keeps them comfortable at level 1. These aren't motivational levels. They're hierarchy positions. Each level has a mindset, a behavior pattern, and a weapon. The rich don't win because they work harder. They win because they operate from higher levels where the rules are different. Machiavelli would call this simple. The man who controls terms controls outcomes. So here are the 7 levels. Find yourself and feel the threat of staying where you are. Level 1, the worker, own time, weapon, effort, weakness, replaceable. This is the man who sells hours. He believes reliability is power. He thinks being needed protects him, but being needed is how you get trapped. The worker's life is ruled by schedules, bosses, clients, and pressure. He can be praised and still be poor because praise doesn't change his terms. If he stops, money stops. He is the engine, not the driver. Most men die here because level 1 feels honorable. At least I'm working. Yes, that's exactly why the system loves you here. Level 2, the optimizer, efficient servitude, weapon. Systems, productivity, skill stacking, weakness, still selling time. The optimizer upgrades his output. He learns tools. He gets certifications. He becomes high-performing. But he's still a servant, just a faster one. His reward is more responsibility, not more sovereignty. The machine loves optimizers because they make production smoother without demanding ownership. Level 2 is where smart men get stuck. They confuse competence with leverage. Level 3, the negotiator, terms-aware weapon. Boundaries, negotiation, positioning. Weakness, still dependent on gatekeepers. The negotiator finally wakes up and starts asking the forbidden questions. What are the terms? What's my upside? What happens if I walk? He stops being easily exploited. He raises his price. He chooses better deals, but he's still playing inside someone else's arena. He can negotiate salary, commissions, contracts, but the gate still belongs to someone else. Level 3 is power compared to level 1, but it's still not sovereignty. Level 4, the gatekeeper, control of access, weapon, access, approvals, distribution, weakness, political enemies. The gatekeeper doesn't just do work, he decides who gets to work. He controls a channel. Hiring, budgets, partnerships, approvals, distribution, client pipelines, audience attention. That's why he wins. People come to him. At level 4, you stop chasing opportunity. Opportunity chases you because you control the door. This is where morality changes. Not because you become evil, but because you see how many people pretend to be good until they need something from the gate. Level 5, the owner, equity and assets, weapon, ownership of cash flow, weakness, exposure to risk and volatility. The owner doesn't get paid for time. He gets paid for what he owns. This level is where the game breaks for fair men because ownership requires discomfort, risk, responsibility, and the willingness to be disliked. Owners are attacked by parasites and judged by workers. But owners don't care because their system prints value while others sleep. This is the first level where wealth becomes natural instead of forced. Level 6. The allocator, capital and influence, weapon, capital allocation, investments, leverage stacking. Weakness, visibility, regulation, enemies. Allocators decide where money goes. They fund, they acquire, they invest. They move resources like chess pieces. At this level, you don't build one machine, you buy machines. You don't grind, you deploy. This is why the rich get richer. The allocator turns time into capital, then capital into more capital. Fair men can't stomach level 6 because it looks unfair. Exactly. It is. Fairness doesn't exist here. only outcome. Level 7, the sovereign, unbuyable, uncontrolled weapon, independence, optionality, narrative control. Weakness, none that matters, because he can walk. The sovereign is the man who cannot be forced. He has options. He has buffers. He has influence. He can disappear from bad deals without dying. He can refuse without panic. This is the level the rich protect the most, because sovereignty is the final defense against exploitation. The sovereign doesn't ask permission. He sets terms or exits. Now the psychological purpose of Chapter 3 is simple. It removes your confusion. If you're stuck after 30, it's usually because you're trying to win at level 1 with level 1 weapons. Effort, loyalty, patience. In a world where higher levels use ownership, access, and allocation. So stop calling it bad luck. Stop calling it unfair. That language keeps you passive. Call it what it is. You're playing below your needed level. And the rich will keep winning until you climb. Fairness is not your shield, it's your scent. The system can smell a fair man the way a predator smells an injured animal, because fair men broadcast the same signals: patience, loyalty, shame around wanting more, fear of conflict, pride in endurance. Those traits aren't bad. They're just profitable to exploit. And after 30, extraction accelerates because your life gets heavier. Bills, family, reputation, time pressure. You become less willing to gamble, so you become easier to contain with stability and labels. This is how the trap closes. Extraction has always been the default. You were taught a modern fairy tale. Work hard and you'll rise. That story is recent, and it's optional. Human history ran on a different model. A small class owned the system, and the rest produced under rules they didn't write. Feudalism wasn't just land. It was hierarchy locked into law. The peasant worked, the lord collected. The peasant was told duty was noble. The lord was told dominance was natural. That didn't disappear. It evolved. Courts replaced castles. Contracts replaced chains. Salaries replaced rations. But the patterns stayed the same. The many are trained to be dutiful. The few are trained to set terms. Fairness is the story that keeps the dutiful calm while terms are decided elsewhere. The corporate version of feudalism in modern systems, fair men become high performers with no ownership. They're praised publicly, hardworking, reliable, team player, culture fit, then exploited privately, more work, more responsibility, more emotional labor, same ceiling. This is why fair men plateau after 30, not because they lack talent, because the machine doesn't reward talent with sovereignty, it rewards talent with more dependency. They make you indispensable in the role so you can't leave. They need you to keep the system stable, and stability is how owners protect upside. A fair man hears, "We need you," and feels valued. A strategist hears, "We need you," and hears capture. Debt. The invisible collar want to know the cleanest extraction tool ever invented. Debt. Debt turns men into compliant units. It makes risk feel immoral because failure now threatens your family, your identity, your image. It makes you accept bad terms because you can't afford volatility. Once you have debt, fairness becomes your religion because it gives you psychological comfort. If I do the right thing, things will work out. Debt doesn't care about right. Debt cares about payment. That's why the system loves the post-30 phase. You're most productive, most responsible, and most trapped. Morality as a control system, they don't need to physically force fair men. They control them through social punishment. Negotiate hard. You're difficult. Ask for equity. You're greedy. Refuse extra work. You're not a team player. Walk away. You're ungrateful. These labels are not moral judgments. They're behavioral correction tools. Because the system can't afford men who set terms. It needs men who accept them. And fair men, men who fear being seen as selfish, are the easiest to correct with shame. That's the key. Your morality becomes a lever used against you. Why it gets worse after 30, because time becomes your enemy. In your 20s, you can absorb bad terms while you build skill. After 30, The clock adds pressure. You start thinking in survival terms, even if you won't admit it. You want stability. You want predictability. So the system offers you comfort at a price. And the price is sovereignty. That's why fair play fails. Fairness requires an authority that enforces it. But in most systems, the authority is aligned with ownership, not with fairness. The referee is hired by the house. So what happens to fair men? They become resources. Their labor becomes profit for someone else. Their loyalty becomes leverage against them. Their patience becomes permission to underpay them. Their silence becomes proof they'll tolerate extraction. And once the system learns you tolerate extraction, it increases it. Because why wouldn't it? Predators don't stop because you're good. They stop because you're costly to exploit. That is the threat chapter 4 installs. If you keep playing fair after 30, you don't just fall behind. You get harvested. And harvesting is quiet. It looks like a ceiling you can't break, rising workload with flat reward respect, without equity compliments, instead of terms years passing while you wait your turn. That's not bad luck. That's design. After 30, you don't need more motivation. You need new operating rules. Because if you keep playing with level 1 instincts, loyalty, patience, effort, you will be farmed by level 4-6 players who understand leverage and don't apologize for using it. So the upgrade path is not work harder. It's change what you trade. You stop trading time for approval. You start trading value for terms. Here's the post-30 shift, step by step, cold, strategic, Machiavellian. 1. Price your time like it's territory. Your time is not a gift, it's land. If anyone can walk onto it, occupy it, and leave you exhausted, you don't have a life. You have an open border. So you install a rule. Access to you is conditional. Fewer meetings, fewer favors, fewer unpaid extras. More no, without explanation. Not because you're arrogant, because you're building leverage. A man with no protected time cannot build assets, skills, or networks. He can only serve. A fair man says yes to be liked. A leverage man says no to be free. 2. Convert labor into ownership. If your work creates value, your next question is not, will they notice? Your next question is, what do I own as a result? Ownership doesn't always mean stocks on day one. It can mean equity, revenue share, licensing, assets you control, a productized skill, a distribution channel, a client list. You own a platform you can move with. The key is this. You must stop building other people's machines as your life strategy. If you cannot convert labor into ownership, you're just polishing someone else's empire. 3. Build optionality before you need it. Optionality is the ability to walk away without dying, and it must be built before you confront power. Most men try to negotiate when they're desperate. That's not negotiation, that's begging with extra words. Optionality comes from cash buffers, diversified income, portable skills, tied to revenue, a network outside your current environment. Proof you can create value elsewhere. When you have optionality, your posture changes. You speak differently. You tolerate less. You stop flinching because you're no longer trapped. 4. Shift from being needed to being hard to replace. Stop worshipping indispensability in a role you don't own. If you're indispensable but replaceable in title, you're a captive asset. They keep you right where you are because moving you risks the system. So you build scarcity in the only ways that matter. You control a pipeline, clients, distribution, audience. You own a process, systems others rely on. You have relationships that move money. You solve expensive problems fast. The system rewards what it cannot easily replicate. 5. Align with power without becoming a servant. Fair men avoid power because they think power is corrupt. That moral reflex keeps them blind. Power is not evil. Power is the ability to enforce reality. You don't need to worship powerful people. You need to understand them and position yourself so you're not beneath them. Alignment means be valuable to decision makers, be seen in rooms that matter, attach your output to revenue and outcomes, learn the language of terms. Not feelings, a Machiavellian rule. Never be emotionally loyal to power. Be strategically useful while you build your own leverage. 6. Negotiate from scarcity, not need. Your negotiation style reveals your rank. If you negotiate like you need approval, you'll get scraps. If you negotiate like you can leave, you get terms. Rules. Ask for specific upside, not vague recognition. Tie your contribution to measurable outcomes. Set deadlines and conditions. Be willing to walk away. Cleanly walking away is not dramatic. It's proof you're not owned. 7. Stop trying to win fairly against unfair players. This is the final behavior shift. You stop moralizing the battlefield. You don't cheat. You don't become sloppy. But you stop fighting with childish rules while others fight with leverage. You adopt the adult rule, outcome over ego. You choose environments that pay. You exit environments that extract. You protect your time like territory. You convert labor into ownership. You build optionality until you can't be pressured. That is the post-30 upgrade path, not motivation, not comfort, not dreams, position. Because after 30, fair play fails for one reason. Fairness is irrelevant when you don't control the terms. And your only job now is to become a man who does. Your biggest enemy after 30 isn't poverty. It's the identity that keeps you compatible with extraction. The good employee, the reliable guy, the team player, the man who feels proud when he's used heavily because it proves he's valuable. That identity is a domesticated animal wearing a human face, and it has to die. Because the system doesn't exploit you because you're weak. It exploits you because you're compliant. You don't create problems. You don't threaten exits. You don't demand terms. You absorb pressure quietly and call it maturity. That makes you the perfect asset. A Machiavellian lens doesn't romanticize this. It labels it accurately. You've been trained to be owned. Owned men are rewarded with compliments. Controlled men are rewarded with security. Captive men are rewarded with predictable routines. And that's enough to keep them in the cage. So Chapter 6 is the execution of the good employee identity, so you can finally negotiate from sovereignty, not guilt. 1. Kill the addiction to approval. The good employee is addicted to being seen as professional, nice, reasonable. That addiction makes you governable through shame. They don't need to threaten you. They just imply. You're difficult. You're not a culture fit. You're not committed. And you rush back into obedience to protect your image. Machiavellian rule: if someone can control you with a label, they already own you. So you replace approval with a harder metric, outcomes and terms. You stop asking, do they like me? You start asking, am I being paid correctly for the value I create? 2. Kill loyalty without contract. Loyalty is expensive. Stop giving it away like it's free. The good employee stays because of history, guilt, or fear of conflict. They gave me a chance. We're like family. I can't leave them short-staffed. That's emotional blackmail disguised as virtue. A sovereign respects agreements, not guilt. If loyalty isn't rewarded with upside, protection, or ownership, it becomes slavery with a handshake. So you adopt a new law. I stay where the terms respect me. 3. Kill the work hard and they'll notice. Fantasy. That fantasy is the narcotic that keeps men producing without demanding ownership. You've seen it already. Work harder, get more work. Become indispensable, get trapped. Solve problems, get relied on. Rarely get equity, because the system can't reward everyone with sovereignty. It needs producers at the bottom. So you stop worshipping effort as destiny. Effort is a tool, not a religion. Machiavellian rule: effort without leverage is charity to your employer. 4. Replace compliance with boundaries and cost. The good employee absorbs disrespect because he thinks boundaries are risky. But boundaries are how adults price access. New operating rules. Extra work requires extra compensation or extra upside. Urgent. Requests require trade-offs. Disrespect triggers distance. Not discussion. Recurring extraction triggers exit planning and the critical piece. Boundaries without cost are decorative. You stop arguing, you enforce, you reduce availability, you let consequences speak. 5. Replace identity. From employee to operator, this is the replacement. An employee is a role. An operator is a posture. Operator mindset. I sell outcomes, not my soul. I negotiate terms, not feelings. I build assets, not only resumes. I protect my time like territory. I maintain optionality, so I'm never cornered. The operator can work inside a company, but he doesn't emotionally belong to it. He belongs to his own sovereignty. That's why he's hard to exploit. He has a spine made of options. 6. The final cut. Kill the fear of being disliked. This is where most men fail. They'd rather be liked than paid. They'd rather be good than free. They'd rather be praised than positioned. And the rich, level 4 to level 6, count on this. They count on your fear of tension to keep you cheap. So you execute that fear. You accept a new truth. Being disliked by extractors is a sign of progress. When parasites call you selfish, it means you stopped feeding them. The good employee, inside you will scream when you enforce terms. Let it scream. That's withdrawal. That's the old identity dying. Because after 30, you don't get rich by staying respectable to people who profit from your obedience. You get rich by becoming the man who cannot be cheaply used. Here's the final warning. After 30, the world doesn't punish you for being stupid. It punishes you for being fair in the wrong arena. Fairness is only safe when you control terms. If you don't control terms, fairness becomes self-harm with a moral label. And the system loves men who self-harm quietly, because quiet men don't revolt. Quiet men don't demand. Quiet men don't negotiate hard. Quiet men stay grateful while they're being harvested. So I'll say it clean, stay fair, stay poor. Not because wealth requires evil, because wealth requires leverage, and fair men refuse leverage when it makes them uncomfortable. They confuse leverage with manipulation. They confuse boundaries with selfishness. They confuse negotiation with greed. They confuse exiting with disloyalty. Those are the mental prisons that keep you safe for extraction. Machiavelli would call this the oldest trick in governance. Convince the many that obedience is virtue, then let the few write the rules. That's what fair play is for in adulthood, especially after 30. It's a filter. It separates men who will accept terms from men who will set them. The Postman's 30 reality test. Look at your life like an auditor. Do you control any asset that produces while you sleep? Do you have optionality, or are you cornered by bills and obligations? Do you negotiate from strength or from fear of being disliked? Do you own any pipeline, clients, distribution, audience access? Can you leave your environment without collapsing? If the answer is no, then your fairness is not ethics. It's helplessness polished into identity, and helpless men get managed. The trap of being a good man, the most exploited man, is the man who wants to be seen as good, because good is a social badge. It can be used against you. Good men don't ask for that. Good men don't push back. Good men don't leave. Good men don't negotiate like that. These statements are not moral teachings. They are control commands. They exist to keep you inside level 1 and level 2, producing value while others collect it. So the final identity shift is non-negotiable. You stop trying to be a good man in the eyes of the extractors. You start being a sovereign man in the eyes of reality. Final warning, don't become a cartoon villain. Here's the part weak minds misunderstand. Machiavellian doesn't mean reckless. Reckless men don't gain leverage, they gain enemies. The goal isn't to cheat. The goal is to stop being a volunteer victim. You can operate strategically, ethically, and still be ruthless about terms. Ruthless about terms means you do not donate your time to people who profit from you. You do not confuse loyalty with slavery. You do not accept ceilings as destiny. You do not let shame negotiate your life. If you want wealth after 30, you must be willing to do what fair men refuse. Walk away, price yourself, build assets, and demand upside. Not loudly, not emotionally, coldly. Most people watching this will agree and still do nothing. They'll call it interesting. They'll save the video. They'll talk about it. Then they'll go back to being harvested because it's familiar. If that's you, don't lie to yourself with ambition. Admit you prefer comfort. But if you're serious, prove it with one action in the next 24 hours. Identify one place you're being extracted. Remove one unpaid obligation. Make one negotiation for terms, not praise. Start one asset that can outlive your hours. Build one piece of optionality, cache buffer, skill, pipeline connection. Then write one word in the comments, leverage, not for motivation, as a signal you're done playing fair in a rigged arena. Because after 30, the rich don't win by being luckier than you. They win because they stopped obeying stories designed to keep them obedient. And if you keep worshipping fairness while others set terms, you will stay exactly where the system wants you, useful and owned.